What's up, guys? This is Jedith, and Havoc just got word that we are getting another set of nerfs coming this Tuesday, December 19th. And it's kind of the same sort of stuff that we got last time. Obviously, different things are being hit here, but overall, the same severity of the nerfs is around the same as the last set of nerfs that we got. But we'll talk over each one today and kind of talk about why they're significant, how you might feel them in your keys, in your raid, what you really should be worried about and what you shouldn't be worried about, because there's definitely some things that really aren't as bad as they seem. First of all, we'll see that Sigil of Flame damage has been reduced by 10%, and this isn't just for Havoc. This is for the Demon Hunter class as a whole, and my kind of understanding of this is Havoc Sigil of Flame damage wasn't all that absurd, but it wasn't near the top. It was just kind of mid, lower mid, probably even low. What this is really hitting is Vengeance. So if you have played Vengeance at all lately, played with other Vengeance players, and you've looked at their breakdown, Sigil of Flame is doing a lot of damage for them. So this is the damage breakdown of Dan on his Vengeance Demon Hunter, and you can see Sigil of Flame during this Black Rook hold, plus 24, was doing almost 30% of his overall damage. So this is where the Sigil of Flame nerf is coming from. Not so much us, more so for Vengeance, although we are still going to be hit with that. Now, onto the Havoc stuff. Collective Anguish damage from summoned Fel Devastation reduced by 10%. So all this is doing is it's kind of reversing an inadvertent buff that we got last time. Because if you remember last time, just Fel Dev as a whole, as an ability, the damage of it got buffed. So not only was that a buff to Vengeance, but it was also a buff for us because we get Fel Dev through Collective Anguish. And I don't think that was intended. What this nerf is doing is basically just rolling that back, reducing that damage back to where we had it before. Nothing to be too worried about there. The Collective Anguish nerf is going to affect some builds more than others. The builds that are really going to be hit by this are builds that are playing Cycle of Hatred, because obviously with Cycle of Hatred, you're reducing the cooldown on your I-beam. The more I-beams you're doing, the more Collective Anguish use you're getting from those I-beams. So any build that uses Cycle of Hatred is obviously going to feel this a bit more, but none of the mainstream Havoc builds right now are really playing Cycle of Hatred or Shattered Destiny or anything like that. Now, the Ragefire damage stored from Immolation Aura critical strikes reduced to 30% was 35%. This is probably the nerf that you'll notice the most, especially on your breakdown. If you're looking at the meters and you're looking at your breakdown and seeing like what each of your abilities do, this is the one you're going to see the most. It's not going to be horrible. We're not dead. We're not dead in the water. Essentially, if we go here, it's at the top of our meters. Immolation Aura and Ragefire are doing a lot of damage. I would say a nerf to this is probably to be expected. Ultimately, the nerf to Ragefire is going to be around 16%. So you could take this number, whatever this is, and reduce it by 16%. So these nerfs to Havoc are mostly going to be affecting our Mythic Plus sort of performance, but it's not going to be affecting it to the degree that we have to worry at all. You probably won't even notice it, to be completely honest. These nerfs are targeting Mythic Plus, and they're basically doing nothing in terms of our raid performance. Because if you think about it, for Ragefire, we're not really using Ragefire all that much in raid. There are maybe a few bosses that you would swap to Ragefire. As the tier progresses, as we get more gear, as the rest of our team gets more gear, and the kill times of those bosses get smaller and smaller, and just the time that the ads are living on those fights is getting smaller and smaller, Ragefire becomes less useful. So the best example I can give of that would be if you think of Igira, right? The second boss in the raid. Those spears that are spawning are dying quicker every week. Literally every week. At this rate, like they're living maybe a few seconds before my raid just blows them up. You would go into that fight thinking, oh, there's going to be ads that need to die. They need to be, blasted down. I'm going to take Ragefire. But half the time, Ragefire is completely useless there because, one, the spears are dying so quickly that you're not really like ramping any damage from them because your Immolation Aura is only ticking a few times. And it's not like you can build up your Ragefire beforehand and have it explode on them for any significant amount of damage because you only have one target to funnel from, which is the boss, leading up to the spears. Ultimately, Ragefire and nerfs to it aren't really going to affect raid all that much. I think we're going to start seeing people not even use Ragefire on some of those bosses in the near future, but we'll have to see how that pans out. And the last nerf that we are receiving on Tuesday is a Fire Inside, chance to reset Immolation Aura reduced to 25%, was 30%. So this one also is not as bad as it seems. The most valuable part of the talent of Fire Inside comes from just the fact that we have 2 charges of Immolation Aura when we take this. That's where the majority of the value from this talent is. You can have 2 charges of Immolation Aura, meaning you can use one, and then you have another charge available, and while that's happening, you're recharging that first charge. So there's basically always a rotation, and they're always rolling, and you're always going to pretty much have one ready if played properly. The procs, on the other hand, they're kind of just like the icing on the cake. You can't really depend on them or rely on them. When they happen, and they're great. Taking the nerf to AFI and the proc chance, having it go from 30% down to 25%. So the one thing that I'm a little concerned about when it comes to this is, like I said, all of these nerfs that are happening to Havoc, they're all hitting our AoE. These are all things that have been kind of outliers on our Mythic Plus breakdowns, things that need to be reined in a little bit. So of course, once those types of things get out of control, they get nerfed. On the other hand, some of the buffs that other classes are getting, like if we look at Mage, for example, Arcane getting buffs, Fire getting buffs, Frost getting lots of buffs. Like these are massive buffs. Frostbolt increased by 15%, Ice Lance 12, Fire Blast 12%, Flame Strike 12%. These are all buffs that are going to be helping them in raid too. We're getting nerfed in AoE. Our single target is staying mostly the same, and we're not getting nerfed in single target all that much. But other classes are getting buffed. I could see us maybe going down a little bit when it comes to our single target in raid in terms of like the charts, right? So we might be seeing Havoc go down a peg or two in terms of like, relative to other classes single target in raid. But I do think that we are still in a great spot. If played properly, our single target is quite good. Again, nothing to be too concerned about. I just wanted to point out that like the nerfs that we were getting were hitting our AoE. Some of the buffs that other DPS classes and specs are getting are buffing their AoE and their single target. So just something to keep in mind. Overall, how much of a percentage are we getting hit with, right? I didn't do this. Smarter people than me did this. But they came around to the numbers of around 4% nerf in AoE in Mythic Plus, and then 1% nerf in single target. Now, the thing about the AoE nerf is it could be more or it can be less. That's going to depend on, fortunately, your skill. So if you're maybe a less skilled, I don't want to say less skilled, that's kind of rude. If you're working on, you're working on your skills, and you're a bit more reliant on Ragefire, on Fel Dev, those types of things doing the majority of your damage. If you're relying on those, you're using them as a crutch, then you're going to feel this a bit more than another player who is getting more of their damage out of their other rotational abilities, like Death Sweep, properly using their inertia windows, stuff like that. But for the most part, it's probably going to be around 4% AoE. So do you have to worry? No, you do not have to worry. These are very light touches. These were to be expected. Some of these things I expected them to hit last time and they didn't. Yeah, so none of this really comes as a surprise. Again, nothing to be concerned about. I'm not concerned. You shouldn't be concerned. No one else is concerned. If you are concerned, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, thanks for watching. Like the video. Make sure you sub to the channel. Have a great day. Peace.